Hi, I'm Tony Allen Bernier, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use liquid Frisket to get 100% resist on your leather. And as always, a big thank you to the Leather Crafters and Saddlers Journal. They do a lot for the community. I suggest checking them out. I always pour it into a separate container so this doesn't dry out. It can dry out pretty quick. Frisket is a latex-based medium that peels off when you're done. So instead of trying to seal the leather enough so and nothing gets through it, this is 100% resist. Put it over whatever you're doing and nothing's getting through this stuff. You just peel it away when you're done. A lot of people use this for different art like watercoloring and stuff, but this works great for leather too. So you can see I'm going real thick, basically making a puddle. Spread it around quick and then get up to the edges. I usually try to go even thicker in the cuts and deep depressions. But if you let it dry too much as you're doing this, you're going to start sticking to it and just peeling it right back up right away. You just keep adding more. You want to just keep working this puddle around. If I plan on antiquing this afterwards, I'm not as worried about getting in the cracks next to the tooling because antiquing is going to fill that stuff in. However, if I'm not going to antique, I'm real careful not to get down into that crack. This is a great way to get 100% resist. This stuff will just peel off later on. So I'll grab a brush that I don't mind ruining, because after this, there's really nothing else you can do with this brush, and it's not even going to last very long while you're doing this. There's a few tricks, however, to keep your brush lasting as long as possible that I'll go over here in a minute. So you want a lot on your brush. If it looks to be a little too much, just a little shake to get that big drop off, but you do want it loaded up quite a bit. And you're just working this puddle around. If I'm going to antique later, I'm not as concerned about getting into that little crack next to the tooling. But if I'm not going to antique, I'm real careful just to get on this edge without going down into that crack next to the tooling here. And you're always better having extra on your brush than not enough, because it's going to start sticking and the brush will start to dry out. Whenever I go over these cracks, tooling or a cut, I go even thicker. That way when I peel, it'll come out of there easier. However, make sure you keep a hold of one of these old brushes. Even though it's ruined, that latex will grab itself. So if you have any issues with little pieces sticking in those cracks after you peel it off, one of these old brushes, rub it in that crack and it'll grab that right out of there. So if I keep working it too much, it's going to start sticking. You want to let this dry, and then we'll do a second coat. And if you're in a hurry, your second coat, you can just go in the deep depressions and the cuts and stuff, but I do highly suggest going a good thick second coat. That way it peels off real nice. Even though this is just my first coat, sometimes I'll go back and just give a little bit in some of these deep tooling marks or cuts. That little bit of extra is going to help it pop up later. So now I'm going to do a second coat, and the leather isn't going to absorb the liquid as much, so you don't have to go quite as thick, but you still want to do a nice thick layer of this. Same method as before, just work a little puddle around. When you first put your brush down, when you have a big droplet on here, if I just put it down and let go, it could flow where I didn't want it to, especially if it's already kind of thick and I come in, it might push across an edge. So what I do when I come in with the brush is I leave it down so I can control that drop right off the bat. But you can see how thick it is right here. Really just directing this puddle around. So it's not quite building up yet, but if you're doing a larger piece, you can see it's going to start to build up back on the bristles a little bit, and it's going to thicken and dry right here. It's going to get a little dot thickening on the tip as well. So what I do, instead of just grabbing this brush and trying to wipe it clean, you're going to grab this condensed stuff here and mash it into the bristles, rendering the brush pretty useless. But if you get a little dot forming on the end, if you leave it, it'll get stringy and pull around and could mess up your work. But that little end piece I'll just grab, and you can see how it's kind of stringy already. So I grab that off, just the tip, so the bristles still move around. If I was to just grab it and pull the whole thing off of there, that's going to mash in there and it's going to flatten the bristles, and they're not going to have that flex to them. I'll throw a picture up that I have of a brush that I was using for quite a while on some armor I made. That's got a lot of buildup on it, so that'll give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. So this one was airbrushed, and you can see it wasn't pooled enough to soak into those edges. So I have two pieces here. This one was airbrushed, and you can go darker, just don't saturate it. Maybe do a couple coats to get your desired color. And you can see it didn't soak into those edges at all, while this one I painted on really thick, and where the edges were exposed and didn't get frisket on them, it really soaked in, and the other spots it kind of still eked up underneath there. So you got to be real careful if you're doing that. Another way you could do this is after you put the frisket on, seal it with acrylic resin so then it seals all those gaps, and then use antiquing over the top of it.